Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my interviews. Now, we all have heard how the farming community are under threat in a whole load of different ways, particularly from the government. But what if it isn't just the government? I mean, we've got all the nonsense that is put onto farmers, but the stresses and the strains that farmers, small farmers, big farmers are under is quite severe. But what if you happen to find yourself within, say, I don't know, a family splitting up, and you've got a big parcel of land or a small parcel of land, come to that, and you need to divide it up, and you are then desperate to keep your farm going, but at the same time, you've got to honour say, a divorce. Well, the guest today is in such a situation. Fifth generation farmer. Her name is Casa, and she is on Babington Farm. Babbings Wood Farm in Oswestry, which is, as she just told me, is the gateway to Wales, fairly close to Shrewsbury in Shropshire. Casa, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your plight. We're so interested in farming at the moment on the channel and the sort of threats and the problems that you have, because it's so important to get the food supply secure, and that seems to be under threat. But you're under something that I guess must happen to farmers up and down the land over the centuries, when you have the two partners who own it decide to go their separate ways.
Yeah,
So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me to let us know. Sorry about
thank you.
muffling up the name of your farm. I wrote it down. I practiced it. Babbingswood Farm
Yeah.
in Oswestry, a lovely rural part of the world. And I've been up that sort of neck of the woods quite often myself. What type of farming do you do, first of all?
So the farm's down to pasture, which is just grass based,
Right.
and we've got woodlands and mature hedgerows, but it's 100% sort of pasture based system.
And
Yeah.
and so animals?
Yeah, we have, so we graze cattle and sheep, and we have one horse that thinks he's a cow.
Well, he's probably feeling left out if he's a
Yeah.
solo horse. Bless him. So is that beef or dairy?
So we do beef and dairy, and have quite a sort of a micro business. I run a micro dairy which produces um, milk from cows who rear their calves naturally, and they get milked once a day, and it's a seasonal production. Yeah.
And did you sell raw milk by any chance?
I'm licensed to sell raw milk. I love that saying.
Oh,
Licensed to
excellent.
sell.
License to sell. So it's a bit
Yeah.
like, in that respect, the way you bring up your dairy cows, a bit like John Cook down at Dora's Dairy that we visited in the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Quite
is a
similar. Yeah.
very wholesome and natural way of doing it. So your animals are not under stress and all of that, and presumably they're sharing the milk with the calves, and then
Yeah.
you take the surplus, I suppose, and do what you do with it.
I do.
Uh,
Yeah, I believe it's it's a natural way of doing it, and as low stress as you can possibly get it. Yeah.
and this is the sort of thing. I mean, I'm a great advocate for that, and this is the sort of thing that I would like to see, and many people do would like to see more farms doing that sort of natural way of farming rather than the big industrial thing. So it's always a worry when you hear a farm is suddenly under the threat of potentially selling off its land or closing and all of that. Not least, as I said at the beginning, by the pressures and strange quirks the government want to do, but when it becomes actually a problem within the family who run it. So tell us then what is happening with your farm.
So my parents separated a long time ago, so over 10 years ago, and eventually they sort of decided that, that's permanent and they wanted to get divorced. Um, Now, we, as sort of anyone that lives or has a family, or is involved in a farm, the farm itself is the family. You know,
Yes.
it's your
It's your
it's
way of
just
life.
another extremity. Yeah.
Yes,
And you kind of you need it to survive. You know,
of
it's
course.
your livelihood. So it was always going to be a, a difficult situation. The sort of and obviously it was trying to have it was supposed to have happened as amicable as possible, the separation. Um, it nevertheless ended up with the lawyers, and it basically got split in half, and I say we, mum and I are now farming here. My dad is not part of the farming business. He's not actually in the country anymore. He's living life in Africa. But they basically uh, uh, me and mum decided the farm is really an asset to not just the family, the community, and we believe the planet too, because it's a tiny farm. It's 180 acres, which isn't a massive farm in sort of this day and age. But those 180 acres have been farmed organically for since 2002, and we have since 2016 farmed this, managing it with holistic management, holistic plan grazing, with the pure focus to build soil health, which I think we're slow in the farming world anyway. We're starting to really understand that there needs to be more research on the importance of improving soil health, not just for the health of the, the food that's produced out of the soil, whether the animals that eat that and the products that the animals give us, and therefore that sort of that healthy ness travels through the system. And
Absolutely.
so we've tried really hard and worked really hard to um, improve the soil, and therefore now are starting to produce healthy food from that soil. Which, since we um, I've not farmed the farm since I was a little girl. I could talk about more about my sort of upbringing later. I actually came back to the farm from a different industry in 2017 with my pure sort of focus is to produce nutritious, dense food in a healthy, with sort of healthy livestock, low stress environments, and feeding the local community. So I all the food we produce, people can buy straight from us. I don't sell it on anywhere else. We literally are feeding our local community with milk, meat, vegetables that we've grown on the farm, from this really low input system.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, I think there is beginning now, slow as it is, a gradual awareness that this is the type of food that we need to be eating. Certainly, we know that supermarket food is pretty empty of nutrition and vitamin values. Has the farm always been grass based, or has it been arable in the past and things like that?
Yeah, so growing up, so I'm fifth generation, and my dad actually farmed the farm with my mum until 2001. It was predominantly a dairy farm, but they were very much growing food to feed the cattle. So it was sort of as sustainable as possible. A bit of not much food was brought in to sustain the dairy herd, but a lot of that would have been like maize that was grown to then feed them, or barley, for example. So yes, the farm has been ploughed in the past, and could could um, could grow crops. However, I'm with no, I'm not making any judgments. I'm just sort of reacting from the observations we've had sort of on the farm here, as you sort of go around the fields, especially when we first came back to the farm in 2017. You could see like the plough line, which is, you walk around your hedges, and
Yeah.
you wonder why the hedge roots are sort of a good couple of foot out of the out of the field margin. There's a literal drop, and that's because we've been making we've been asking too much of the soil to give us this
Right.
food, and its capacity to be this sort of magnificent sort of substance it is, with life and the ability to hold water, organic matter is sort of depleted all the time, and therefore it loses its structure and reduces, and then we're seeing the effects of that. um,
Yes.
but in 2032 we decided to sort of change the record on that, and just focus on growing soil, which is, we believe, under grass, under a permanent cover crop, basically, and really carefully managing how our cows and sheep move across that ground to not prohibit the soil growth.
Yes, and again, this is something again that we're beginning to realise how much the soil is has been eroded from ploughing constantly and putting artificial fertilizers and pesticides, and poisoning the soil as well
Mm.
as reducing it. And so that all of this adds up to reasons why your farm and others like it who are doing this sort of stuff are vital going forward, because without soil you're not going to grow anything unless you use more and more chemicals, which is not good for any of us, especially if we're eating the products that has grown there. So I'm very much on your side. Now, I don't do any farming. I'm not a farmer. I'd like to be, but I've been
Yeah.
reading up quite a bit about it, so I do know a bit. So your farm is going to have to be split. Now, that, of course, will change if you had to sell off the land. That would
Yeah.
really reduce what you're doing, because presumably that would reduce your herd and the amount of food that you could grow or
Yeah.
offer,
Yeah.
which is terrible. So I presume then that you need to buy out your father, as it were, so that you can keep the farm complete.
So we are a little bit further on than that now. So the divorce was a couple of years ago.
Right.
We And I think we're in this position because of, like, the price of land is extortionate, and the farm, if you just sort of put it on paper, is, a lot of money. There's a lot of money in there. We've got beautiful buildings that have not been sort of developed. We've got a farmhouse. We've got lots of acres. So it's a lot of money, and when you sort of put that on paper and sort of split it in half, it's still a huge amount of money, but it is. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Um, but it isn't, on an income from a farmer. um, you can never, if you sort of remortgaged the half that you bought out,
Yes.
it would it would never be possible to do that, because even though it is your livelihood, you wouldn't be able to afford to sort of repay a mortgage on it, on its value, when it's
Yes.
sort of on paper. But to buy my dad out, which mum and I did. Well, mum did. I did it. She had my support. We got a bridging loan, which was hugely expensive, hugely expensive.
Yes.
And I believe that they actually just thought, well, brilliant, we're going to have a farm at the end of this. There's no way they're going to be repaying it, and we're going to get a whole farm for the price of half. Um, so we sat with the bridging loan for 9 months, and it needed to be repaid. Our journey at that point in time was to sell off some assets off the farm to repay it. The red brick buildings, or some of the land, and kind of we were talking with people at the time that could sort of afford to buy it but rent it us back, because they do trust in the fact that we farm it with our heart, and we farm it with the promise that we will steward it in the best way possible,
Mm.
um, to grow soil and produce nutritious food. Um, Anyway, the kind of time just evolves. Time just disappears. We spoke to banks, we wrote business plans, we had everything, and eventually we could just never get enough to sort of repay the whole thing. In in October 2023, which is kind of the deadline, we to repay the bridging loan. We basically went, well, this is it now. We've just got to sell up. We've got to just default on it. God knows what's going to happen. And the the this was probably the first point where we kind of, Mum and I, put all our cards on the table and said, well, hang on a minute. We're serving a community here, not only nutritious food, but over the past decade, we've also opened a farm up for sort of workshops on, sort of volunteer days working in our organic garden. I do cow cuddling courses and bring people around the parlour, and people come to the farm shop to buy their food. Maybe we should tell them how this predicament we find ourselves in, and whether they want to help in any way. And the first shout out to our community was, it was freezing. It was in December 23. We had a meeting in a barn on the farm. It was snowing outside. It was freezing, but we had about 30 people from the local community join us and listen to our story. And their sort of immediate reaction was, we've just got to keep you. You have to. You're doing such a good thing. The farm, not us. It's not about Mum and I. The farm is such an asset for the community, that we can't lose it. We have to fight this. We got an extension of 6 months on that bridging loan. Again, it cost us an incredible amount of money, of which £19,000 was donated from that group of people. So we've had an incredible amount of support financially from people, and then we found ourselves in the sort of hands of a philanthropist, and they came to us through, again, the sort of the 11th hour of going, we can't see a way forward. Anyway, they believe in how much of an asset this farm is to the community, not just to produce nutritious food, but to provide people with access to the outdoors, access to growing, self-sufficiency courses, and just a place where people can reconnect. I think that's so important as well.
So what did you said the philanthropist came in? Did he settle all the bills? Is it
all
clear?
They paid the bridging loan off.
Wow.
With this foresight that we can create a community around the farm that will keep it going into perpetuity. And that all happened in winter 2023, leading into 24, and then we, as a core group of about 20 volunteers, have been working. I just absolutely, my heart goes out to how hard people have worked to support us as a family and keep this farm going. To produce, to register as a community business, that's taken a huge amount of effort. To produce a community share offer and a business plan for the community in its own right, to satisfy all of the big sort of government organisations, HMRC, the Financial Conduct Authority. We've had to go through all of this journey very rapidly, in order to sort of be able to start selling shares in the farm, which is where we're at right now. yeah, it's been a huge journey on top of being a farmer. I haven't even mentioned my family. I've got two young children, um, and and we've all been living in this um, uncertainty
Yes.
for for a good few years. It's been really difficult.
So are you saying that you no longer are likely to lose the farm now because of this payment? And you've got your scheme to sort of offer shares in the community so that people can sort of invest in it and keep it going, or are there still financial problems?
So we need to repay the loan that the
The
philanthropist. Yeah, we do need to repay that.
Right.
Um,
So that's not a gift as such.
it's not a gift, no, it's a loan. Sorry if I made it sound like a gift. It was a
Right.
gift
Okay.
at the time when they helped us. But
Yes.
no, it was a loan.
Right. So is there pressure now to repay that by a certain deadline? I mean, are or is that an uncertain term?
So we had so the 12 months from having the loan from them, which is the was the initial offer, is up on the 31st of March. I do believe that if we show that we have significant backing from the community and have raised, we haven't got specific figures from them, but if they can see that this is possible and time will help that, I know
Mm.
that they will support us.
Right. So effectively, you just got to try and show that this is a profitable
This,
business,
yeah,
um, and hence you're offering shares to the community to come
yeah,
in and be part of that. And so
yeah,
that way, you save the farm. You can continue doing what you're doing. I mean, I
yeah,
think you've raised some very interesting points there about the role of a farm in a community. That it
mm,
is more than just the farmer and his wife, or whatever, it's the family as a business to just
mm,
earn money, and that does seem to me what's happened to farms, that they've been turned into purely profitable or non-profitable businesses, and rather than actually the asset to the community, and that everybody should be involved because they're producing food for that community.
mm. I think, yeah, I think it's really important. I think, um, I, you know, I can assure you, every farmer out there is farming because they have a passion and um they just want to they believe they're doing it in the best way possible. We just do it all differently, which is
Yes.
the way of doing that's life, isn't it?
Yeah. No.
Um and
But
but
I
you
suppose
wouldn't
that.
farm if you were a farmer and you didn't enjoy it, you wouldn't do it anymore because it isn't an easy life. It's not an easy life. I mean, it's
No.
you can portray it as the good life, and it's has its absolute fantastic perks, but I it is not easy. It's a
No.
way of life, and it's a complete commitment from the
And
whole
we're seeing,
family.
I mean, we are seeing a lot of youngsters who are born into farming families looking at what goes on and
Mm,
thinking, well, I want fast cars, or I want to travel around the world, or I
yeah.
want to do other things, because that's all very much offered these days, that you can do all these things. And being stuck on the farm, having to look after animals every day, unless you've got cover and all those things.
Mm,
And so you can see that how farms are in a dilemma,
mm,
especially sort of traditional farms.
yeah.
Or you've got the larger farms that are run by management teams that are basically selling commodities to processors and distributors and all of that, which is a sort of highly industrial farming, which is
Mm,
very different from what you're doing,
yeah.
because
We're very hands-on.
yeah. and
Yeah.
and I think that we do need to see more of the sort of smaller scale farms, with mixed farming, that are providing food to the local community.
Mm,
And as you say, people can access the farm, see the product, taste the product, and buy the product there and then, rather than seeing swathes of countryside under monoculture. And so all I'm trying to say is that what you're doing seems to me to be incredibly laudable, and those sort of farms need to be saved, because that's really the model for the future. So what do you so here we are, we're chatting away, talking about the benefits of all of this, and I'm sort of, bigging you up, and I, not met you in person or walked around the farm and everything, but it sounds incredibly laudable. What do you need from people, say, watching the show today?
So whether you're local to the farm or in another country, supporting our campaign by either buying a share in our farm, which is fairly accessible, £50 per share, um, or just opening up your sort of awareness to this sort of in the industry's sort of the problems in the industry, after the farming industry at the moment, and seeing if you can support by sharing our story and telling your friends and family about it, and talking to your friends and family about, I don't know, just the simple thing of like, oh, I wonder where our meals come from today, and
Yes.
and just I think it everyone has a responsibility to ask, where does my food come from? Um, Not everyone is in a fortunate position to choose where they can buy their food from, and I do absolutely understand that. And I think, it's saving so our campaign, and saving a project like ours, um, will actually in the future make our offering of nutritious food actually more accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter what your income is, or your background is. You should be able to have access to good nutritious food, and I think that's what kind of keeps me going, because as a family you know we could have split the farm, sold it off, had cash in our pocket. I could have got another job. I could have, it, we didn't have to have, we didn't have to go through the struggles that we've been going through for the past, sort of
Yes.
4 or 5 years. Um, but we did, Mum and I have continued to do this because we do truly believe that it is, you know, having a, a place like this in the community, where you've got farmers like myself and my mum who are open to conversations with everybody about
Yes.
how the land's managed, how the animals are reared, how, you know,
Uh,
how they want to be involved in some way, is it doesn't happen very often, you know.
no, no. I mean,
And we're really open to people to just come and join us.
and I mean, this is, I would imagine, quite it's not just about you and your farm. I mean, it is obviously to you, it is,
Yeah.
because you're incredibly passionate. But this, on the wider scale, for people watching all over the country or even abroad, certainly in the UK, with the government's inheritance tax, which might mean people will be selling off land in order to pay these sort of things, splitting up farms. And you'll know more than anybody else that you're the custodian of the countryside,
Mm.
and that to split farms up, which may end up, covered in solar panels or all these other sort of quirky things that the government want, which is not beneficial if you are trying to grow wholesome food and keep the world alive, which is ultimately what you're doing, and a task that farmers, I'd think, are not often respected for.
Mm.
Even if you're growing food for supermarkets, we're now aware that supermarkets want to sort of take that. Certainly Sainsbury's have a plan to take away all the the food production from farmers themselves, and growing their own specialists, weird farms, offering us all sorts of bizarre things. And I think the majority of people don't really want that. They'd just rather have a lovely steak and some raw milk, and not the vegetarians, obviously, but so what I'm trying to get to, and I'm waffling a bit here, is that your story may well be being repeated up and down the country as farmers are under pressure, and that you're in your own way pioneering ways to keep farms farming and doing what they should be doing, and that is serving their local community, and a wider community if you're offering mail order or whatever, or to smaller shops and things like that. So it's absolutely imperative that we keep farms like yours up and running, and the more people can get involved, whether that's buying shares or other ways, or going on the courses and the various things and supporting it and sharing the story and all that, that's really the important message, isn't it? That we cannot afford our farms to disappear, because without the farmers, we are going to be very stuck.
Yeah, and I absolutely at this moment, we'll just, I'm absolutely, we're not the pioneers. We are we are so fortunate. Actually, Shropshire has its very own first community-owned farm, which is Ford Hall Farm in Market Drayton. Now, 2006, that farm was bought. The family were tenants, had always been tenants for a long time. Longest organic farm in England as well. Was bought for the tenants to continue their farm, and I believe now Ford Hall Community Land Initiative, there are 8,000 landlords within that, and Ben is the tenant, and he farms the farm, and so they have pioneered, and we are so fortunate to have Charlotte Hollands from Ford Hall Community Land Initiative on our board of directors, because their next their next campaign, or what they want to move into, is like, we've done this, we've done this, we've proven it, it is successful. Their community is, around the farm is just so supportive, that we need to now see this happening in other places. Right, so let's support Babinswood Farm, and I know Charlotte supports a lot of other farms around the country. But yeah, you are completely right, Richard. Whether it's succession planning, or having to find money to pay inheritance tax, or pay a divorce, pay out of a divorce, assets, farms at the end of the day they've just got a price tag on them, and that tag is, if you're a farmer on a farmer's income, you'll never satisfy the banks
No.
to be able to sort of go, oh, just lend me the money, I'll buy it out, and pay you back in in a 25-year mortgage or something like that. It's just so unaffordable now, and so yeah, we would love to see this. We are seeing it more and more. People are buying up like old derelict pubs, and getting together and buying, and making, bringing sort of community pubs into it. So yeah, why can't farms be a community asset once again? I know that when my grandparents farmed the farm in, just after the war, there was 50 people from the community that worked on the farm. It was a community in its own right.
I read a lot. I do read a lot of old farming books from the sort of
Yeah.
1930s and things. And when you look back, that the community used to get involved with the harvest,
Yeah.
and there would be the harvest festivals and all of that, and they would, because the towns were smaller and the villages, and there were many more farms, and farms would help one another and all of that. And yes, of course, the labourers were all being paid whatever they were being paid, and presumably always moaning that it was never enough.
Yeah.
But the community got involved because they knew the value of the farm, and they, it was their main source of food, and nobody wanted to see a farm go down.
Mm-hmm.
And in my view now, we're very much in danger of losing agricultural land, and it should be mandated that
Yeah.
farms are ring fenced, that you can never build on them, that somehow they must be kept going so that we can continue to be as self-sufficient as possible as a country, because we saw what happened during the war, where the Second World War and the First World War, when we sort of relied on food coming from overseas, and once your supply lines are cut, hence everyone was doing the dig for victory because we needed to do it.
Yeah.
And in a way, whilst we may not be technically at war, it does seem that the land is under huge pressure to be removed from farming, which is just bizarre. And again, another reason that farms like yours and others, and farmers under stress, should be able, one way or another, to continue to do the magnificent job of growing and supplying food.
Yeah.
It is beyond doubt. So, I mean, I say all of that as a fervent supporter of what you're doing and what other farms are doing, to try and encourage people to sort of think differently about what farm is, and the countryside, the wildlife, and all of that, which goes hand in hand with it. Because
Yeah.
if farms
It's so
disappear,
important.
the wildlife, the wildlife corridors disappear, and heaven forbid we end up in a utopian concreted landscape with just more and more glass and steel everywhere.
Well, I mean, I don't want it for my kids and my kids'
No,
kids, and I don't think
I,
anyone does. And
no,
I think we've got to just raise our eyes a bit as a society, and sort of look down the road at what are we leaving for the future? What are we leaving
yes,
for the future generations? And would we want to live in that world that I think is sort of being created, or can we change that story? And can we get, can our story be the change that we need to see? We want to see, one of the objectives of the Community Benefit Society is that the land is farmed for purpose and not profit.
right,
That's
yeah.
it's a key element of it. And and it's, yeah, it is so important. It's bigger than I think we ever dreamed it would be, this campaign. um and and it isn't about me and mum, whilst we're custodians of it now. um and we're trying to do our best for it now. It'll go
Well,
out of our
exactly. I mean, if
hands.
it's also if
Yeah.
it's split up, it's gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then what have you got to hand over to the
Yeah.
future generations? And people with kids and grandchildren, they're going to want to continue to eat good, wholesome food in another 20, 50, 60 years' time. And if farms disappear or are split up into very tiny little parcels that can't really make a profit to keep the overheads down,
Yeah.
then what are they going to do? How can people find out more about your what you're up to and get involved and all of that? Do you have a website?
Yes. So I'll just explain now. So Babbinswood Farm is the address of the farm. Um, my sort of farming business is Babbinswood Organic Farm, but the Community Benefit Society, which is the organisation that's been set up by the community, of which Mum and I are part of. We are on the board of. We are two of 9 directors on that board. Um, it is a co-op basically, and it's run as with charitable aims. So Babbinswood Community Benefit Society is the future land, is going to be the future landowner, and that is what people are buying shares in.
Right.
And so Babbinswood Community Benefit Society, so online it's babbinswoodfarmcbs.org.uk. We've also got a crowdfunding campaign now. So if you go on crowdfunder and just write Save Babbinswood Farm, that will bring up our campaign. We're on across social media, Babbinswood Farm CBS. But we And as a farm right now, if you're local, we've got loads of events coming up just to get people onto the farm and talk to us.
Yes,
Because,
yes.
I think that conversation is what is the most thing. And I thank you for giving me a moment to talk with you, David, because it is about just hearing people's stories and getting people's stories out there and having that conversation to to begin the
Well,
journey, I
it's
suppose.
and I mean, you mentioned there about coming along to the farm. I mean, nothing gives you more pleasure than to actually turn up and see. You know, it's all very well seeing a bit of paper with a scheme on it, but if you
Yeah,
turn up and you see what's going on,
yeah,
and you know you get a sense of it and the people and everything else and
yeah.
all the other people who've invested in it or part of it and all of that, it would be fantastic.
Mm,
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us about it. You know, as I say, I'm sure that eyes on this will come from other farmers as well who may well
mm,
be in a similar situation and pulling their hair out to
mm,
know how can we save the farm, believe in the same ethos that you do, and really, you know, it is a way of life, and it's something that's so important at this particular time when we've got such a big corporate takeover going on. And it's great to see people thinking about communities again rather than just the big fat profit at the end of it. So well done to you guys,
thank you.
which is very important.
Yeah,
So yeah, thank you so much, Casa, Babbings Wood Farm. Do check that out, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave all the links in the description,
thank you.
and and you know, fingers crossed that it grows. And if I'm in the area, I shall certainly pop in and have a glass of raw milk, which would be lovely.
Absolutely.
Superb. Well, there we go. So that's that. Do check out the links, as I say, in the description. And I will be back with more interviews and more monologues. But from Casa and I, thank you so much for coming along and having a watch. Until next time, from us both, goodbye.